Okay, we're going to talk about how to spend money next. These are just some thoughts I have and philosophy around spending money. Um, I guess I would consider myself not someone who spends a lot of money, and it's naturally something that I'm naturally going to save, and so certain things are going to be easier for me than for other people. But let's get into it. Okay, so we've been talking kind of about this formula for wealth, and the living expenses are kind of the last part of this. So you've got your income, you subtract the taxes, now you got to subtract your living costs. And this together equals what you're saving each year, essentially. So I would say that saving 20% is really a good place to start. That's 20% of your pre tax income. So for someone making $200,000, that's around $40,000 a year. Yeah, if you're saving that much money, you're probably going to be set for retirement and you're probably going to be okay. When you're making $200,000 a year, though, saving up to 40% plus is totally possible to do. So, for example, even like living in New York, let's say you've got $200,000 in income, you've got maybe 30% in taxes, and then so 30% would be like $60,000 in taxes, and then you're spending maybe another 60,000, so that's 120 out of 200. That's 80,000, and so that's about 40% is what you're able to save, which is a lot, and that's great because of the income. And so also, if you're trying to decide between whether you should be making more money or reducing your spending, it's actually much better to just make more money. So focus on trying to get the promotion instead of reducing your spending, if because you're going to get much more money. There's more upside potential with making more money versus if you're just reducing your spending, you have to spend a certain amount of money. There's a limited potential there. And if you want to really only look at one thing, it's just housing cost. Like, this is probably going to be your biggest expense. Normally, people spend less than 30% of their income. In New York, I think a lot of people struggle with this because the rents are so high in New York. But when you're making 200,000, that's not a problem. Yeah, that's about $5,000 a month, and you can get an apartment for that much, or much less than that, for one person. Like a studio is probably around $3,000, so you should be fine. And you know, another thing, if you're like 22 and starting your first job, I would say that living with roommates is probably a good idea. One, because you're kind of used to it being in college, and so it's not really a big deal. It's also good to just have like a social network, and being able to talk to other people who don't necessarily work with you is a good thing to have. You're also going to save some money, somewhere around 6,000 to 12,000 a year, and there's going to be time when you're going to be able to live by yourself. It's actually just kind of hard to go back to living with roommates after that. So it's probably a good idea to have roommates anyway. And the reason for why you want to be saving the money is because the more that you spend now, the longer that you have to work for. Because generally there's the rule of 4% for how much you can withdraw from your investments in order to pay your living expenses. So let's say that you spend $100,000 a year. That means you need to be, uh, you need to be, you need to have like basically like 25 times that much in order um, to save that or get that in your investments, and so or to kind of withdraw that from your investments. So that means you need to have like $2.5 million. If you were to say spend $200,000 a year, you basically have to double that. So you have to save $5 million, and that's going to take quite a few more years to do that. Well, we're actually going to touch on this topic at the end when we talk about financial independence and kind of when you stop saving. But just know that if you spend more money, you're going to have to save more money. You're going to have to work longer. So my philosophy on spending money here is that you really want to spend a lot of money on the things you actually care about and as little on basically everything else. And so I think that, saving money is good, but you really want to still be enjoying your life, which is why it's good to have like certain areas where you are spending a bunch of money. So for me, that's stuff like going to soccer games, and we went to the World Cup actually the last time around, and that was a great experience. And that was only probably $6,000, but like definitely something that you're going to be talking about for a while, and something that's really fun. So it just makes your life a lot better if you're able to spend in areas that you actually care about. Whereas for me, like things like housing is not a thing that I care that much about, and over time, I've actually been able to save a lot of money from just not getting the nicer place. And so, when I was working my first job, actually, and wasn't in software. This was like doing like data analysis type stuff. I was actually able to save a bunch of money, like $30,000 a year, and that actually let me quit my job after 2 years and switch to go to a coding boot camp. The boot camp, I think, cost like $12,000 at the time, and I was able to fund that from my savings, just pay it directly, and also pay any of the living expenses that I had for the 4 or 5 months that I didn't have a job. So that's another like maybe $15,000. So if I hadn't been saving the money early on in that first job, that actually it would have meant that I wouldn't have been able to make this transition to software, which means that I would have lost out on a lot of the income from the job and the experiences from the job. Yeah. Another reason why I think a lot of people spend money is they're comparing themselves against other people. So, if you don't care as much about what other people think about you, or then really you can kind of spend the money that you want to spend on the way that you want to spend it, and you're not spending money on the way that other people expect you to spend it. So that's kind of an important thing. Another concept when it comes to spending money is lifestyle creep. It's basically when you increase your spending when you increase your income. And I would encourage you not to do that, because if you keep doing that, one, the jobs get more stressful over time. And it means that you have to kind of maintain that level of performance, which is quite stressful. So if you want to quit, you might not be able to, because you've spent, let's say, even if you're spending 80% of what you're earning, that's still a big amount of money if you're making like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I would encourage you to try to keep your spending where it is as much as possible, even when you're getting promotions and stuff like that. On the other side of this, so one end, you're spending too much money. On the other side, you can spend too little money. And I would say the line is really around making sure that you're still enjoying your life. So you can delay gratification, but you shouldn't delay it too far, and you should be enjoying your life while that's happening, because otherwise you're just kind of unhappy. Yeah, saving money shouldn't make you unhappy, especially if you're making this much money. Now, and you start to kind of learn over time when certain things are worth paying for. So, for example, like flying direct versus flying one stop. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not, but flying direct is really nice, even in economy. So, yeah, like there's certain things that you should pick and choose of what you think is worth it, and go ahead and actually spend the money there. And logistically, you really should know how much money you're spending every year. Now, I used to use Mint, and that's gone now. So that doesn't really exist. I guess Credit Karma does something with this, but it's not as good. I'm now using this Empower personal dashboard, and that's basically, it's the old Personal Capital that was acquired by Empower. And Empower, they're a business that basically does like wealth management. They have like financial advisors essentially that they can help you to manage your money. I don't necessarily recommend the service because I haven't used it, and nor do I recommend financial like wealth management services in general, but they have this tool that basically allows you to track your spending and imports the transactions from your credit cards and so on. So I find that useful, and I basically then take all those transactions, or the sums of the transactions each month, and then I'll import that into my own spreadsheet, because then I know that I kind of own that and have that forever, even if these different services disappear or something. Cool. So I think that's it for spending. There's probably other things to talk about, but the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of how to not lose money, because there's lots of things that if you want to have more money later on, you're going to have to keep your money. And so not losing it is the first step to keeping your money and having it grow over time.